afternoon and welcome back to By Any Means Necessary. My name is Melvin Thompson. I'm the Executive Director of the Endeleo Institute, the nonprofit arm, the nonprofit community development arm of Trinity United Church of Christ, located at 400 West 95th Street in the beautiful and hot Washington Heights community. Welcome back. This is a wonderful, wonderful day. We just had a wonderful market this past Saturday. We had some folks from one of our partner churches in Oakdale Covenant, right down the street at 95th and Vincennes, come and visit the market. And so they brought some students, some young people. They got a chance to visit our farmers market and our garden. Some of the young people got a chance to see how we, grow some of the things at the Benjamin. Is it the Benjamin Carver? Is it? The Carver Garden. And so we got a chance to see how all of those plants and vegetables are grown and then brought over to our market and then sold. And so it was wonderful. They got a chance to go. I think they walked over to Trinity to see one of our growing towers that I've been telling you about for the past several weeks, and that's really blossoming on the second floor of our library at Trinity. So I mean, that thing is producing kale and chard and collard greens. I mean, it's a sight to see, and very little maintenance. And so we're finding that a lot of our seniors are finding that there's great utility in having and investing in one of these growing towers, because there's very little work to do. You just plant the seeds in some of the little containers. The watering comes from the bottom and periodically waters the plants, and the light is actually artificial, but it serves as sunlight. And so it's just an amazing process to watch. Of course, we have the other one that is located at the Woodson Library, and it's growing gangbusters in the kids library and the children's library on the first floor. So if you haven't been to Woodson, which I can't believe, if you haven't been to the restored Carter G. Woodson Library at 95th and Halsted, you are missing quite a bit. So bring your family. There's something there for everyone. And of course, that growing tower on the first floor is an amazing phenomenon. And I do believe that there are young people who are actually learning more about phosphorus and pH balances and all of these things that is very instructive in terms of agriculture and just learning how things grow, and that our food doesn't come from Jewel or Mariano's, but from the ground. And so it's very instructive, and it's just this hands-on education. I know that CPS has actually put out reports from the farm to school project that they've done so far, the limited ones that they've done so far. They're saying that they're seeing measurable success, because there's just a phenomenon when young people grow their own food, they tend to eat it. And so that must be one of the silver bullets of actually getting young people involved in it. So if you have any thoughts of that, give us a call. If you got any thoughts of anything, it's a lot going on. There's 40 people in the mayoral race. There's a lot of stuff going on. I'm just kidding, but stay tuned. 312-738-1060. Whatever you got on your mind. We're coming to the end of our farmers market, and it's always a reflective time in terms of where we go from here. And I've said many times that we're looking forward to expanding and going to the next phase with our farmers market. We're seeing a transition with our African American farmers, and so there are opportunities for us to do much more than just be a 3 to 4 month out of the year market. We really want to do something year round that creates more opportunities for them and other complementary vendors. So we're working on some things right now, and every day we're trying to make those things happen. So I wanted to talk a little bit today I got something in the mail, which I've been getting a couple of these in the mail, and it's been a nice, pleasant surprise. I got a check. I've been getting a series of checks from the city of Chicago, and they relate to the red light cameras that were placed in the city, and I'm sure a lot of people are being pleasantly surprised of what they're seeing in their mailbox. They're not the full payments that we actually had to pay when we paid tickets, but there's a great percentage of them that we're getting returned because of the work of Brother Mark Wallace from WVON, who gallantly and diligently challenged the ethics and the legality of having these red light cameras. And that really, and I wanted to share that because that really speaks to, several weeks ago we talked about the concept of power, and because you see, so many candidates that are throwing their hats in the ring, who aspire to have a certain level of power in this city, you realize and recognize, how precious that is, and if it's used in the right way, you can really make a difference. And so what Brother Mark has done is just phenomenal, and it really goes to show that the power really lies in one person. It doesn't take an army of people, particularly when you're right, when you have evidence, and you can argue in the court of law about the legality and ethics and morality and all of those things that are just handed to us. We don't have to accept. And it got me thinking today about the things that we've accepted in our community over the last several decades. Had we had this kind of diligence about things that have happened in our community and done more than merely complain about them. And I'm not saying that protesting and debate aren't viable recommendations, but at the same time, we need to be able to put that talk to a walk and actually do some things and challenge more than we've done in the past. I thought about the food deserts that are in our community, the south and west sides of the city, and what would have been the reaction when the first Jewel food store or the first Dominic's food store decided to leave the community? What if we had gathered ourselves, and just really banded together to say, this is unacceptable. This is absolutely unacceptable, and held our politicians and everyone accountable for that. That flight away from our communities, then we might not have been in the situation that we're in today, in terms of literally having to beg grocers and these big box grocers to come in or come back to our communities. And so we can certainly point the finger at a number of people, but we have to look inward and say, enough is enough. We can't just accept some of the things that come across our table. We have to be much more active, and we need to use our power, because we can change things. And I think every time I get one of these refund checks, it's my own money that I had to spend for something that was unjust. And would I have done more than just complain about it? Probably not, honestly. And so, I really take my hat and tip my hat to a brother, and I've had a chance to, say that to him publicly, how much this means, and and he's not stopping there. He's doing this major voting drive to have African Americans rally around a single candidate. He's not choosing a candidate. It's just us coming together and finding consensus on someone who can represent us and our interests. And That's the 10 by 10 campaign. You know, if you listen to WVON, you'll hear plenty about it. It's gotten so much momentum, and I fully support just the concept of us coming together like that to do these kind of things, because what's in the balance is the future of our city. From an education standpoint, from a health standpoint, from an economic development standpoint. I mean, it touches everything. I mean, we there's relevance, and so what we do at Endeleo in health, education, and community development is so necessary, because you can't talk about quality of life unless you're talking about quality education, health, unless you're talking about urban development and redevelopment. You just can't. You have to be a thriving community in order for everyone to enjoy a quality of life. And so, while it's a daunting task for us at our organization, we've got a very small organization, and it's a daunting task to tackle. I mean, if we were just doing health, it would be plenty. If we were doing education, it would be more than enough. And community development is, I mean, it really encompasses so much. There's so much, and so little manpower to cover it all. But we just cannot deny the inextricable links between the three, and so that's why we do what we do. And so we've been able, to affect some really positive change, and some systems that are that were in place. The whole methodology of how we were able to get the library back on really good, strong footing, and now it's a wonderful place, goes beyond just a renovation, right? Because now, families are, piling in there in droves. They're taking advantage of all of the programs and services, and we're just beginning. I mean, we've had how many community vision minis? I think 3 so far. Yeah, 3. Thanks, T. And so they've been very well attended, very heated. You can tell there's a whole lot of passion around cleanliness and disinvestment, and people hanging out on the streets, and why we're not seeing the kind of development in our communities. And so there's a wide range, and so the library really facilitates that dialogue, because outside of the library, unless you're in a church listening from the pulpit of a pastor, you don't get to engage in that kind of conversation. And so we really appreciate the Woodson Library and the incredible work that Linda Scope is doing as director, and engaging us and being a full partner with us. They're not just on an island at 95th and Halsted. They're really engaging out into the community. They've attended at least 2 of our farmers markets to kind of bring the library to the community. It's just fabulous, and that's what it's going to take. It's going to take local government, community residents, community organizations. We're all going to have to, have our hand in this, no matter who's on the 5th floor in City Hall next year. It's going to take this kind of effort, because even if it's someone that we really support that takes the mantle, we cannot afford not to help this person pass legislation and get the kind of policies and economic development initiatives that will improve the quality of life in our community. So, if there's any thoughts out there, 312-738-1060. We're really excited about the upcoming events. I want to show you at least one of them. This is the Red Line Extension Project, and if you live anywhere near one of the stations that are in existence right now on the south side of Chicago, particularly from 95th Street back south, then this is a meeting that you will want to attend. Next Wednesday at where else? The Woodson Library Auditorium. There's going to be thoughtful discussion and conversation around the Red Line Extension Project, the $2.4 billion Red Line Extension Project. And so from 6:30 to 8 o'clock, we're going to have a dialogue. There are going to be some experts, some African American researchers who've been doing a ton of study for the last, goes back more than a decade before this was even, actually consummated, to talk about, their findings, what's taking place, thus far, the origin of the Red Line Extension Project. Who actually, proposed doing it, and what the impact is going to be for residents who live near the existing stations at 115th, and then what's going to happen at the new proposed stations at, I believe, 103rd, 111th, and 130th, and I may have that mixed up. Maybe it's 115th that already has a station, but there's going to be some displacement, and I know the city has had a couple of information sessions maybe a year or so ago at the Gwendolyn Brooks High School, but this is a dialogue that's more community focused, and from people that have done really a great deal of diligence around this. And so I strongly urge you, if you can attend. We structured it in kind of like the evening, so folks who are working can stop by and participate and engage some of the some of the speakers around what this actually means for the community going forward. Everyone can see clearly the 95th Street station that's coming along quite well, frankly. Now they're on the north side, working on that very diligently. The south side has been completed, and so in the next few months, weather permitting, you could see, I think, the completion of that sometime in early or spring of 2019. And so, what are the opportunities going forward, and what does that mean from a hiring perspective and from a construction perspective? And these are the kind of conversations that are probably going on that we aren't privy to. And so we need to be at the front, making our voices heard. And this seminar, this actual conversation, this town hall, if you will serve to give the city voice, and that we can speak on on a united front going forward, so that we'll have a modicum of knowledge to go forward and know that what we're saying is actually accurate, and that before anything or anyone is designated to do this kind of work, that there's some kind of community representation, some measurable community representation going forward, because we're talking about a $2.4 billion investment on the south side. And we don't want to be looking outside the fence, wondering and complaining about, why we don't have a piece of that pie. And, some might say, that everything has already been decided. Well, let's find out, because, there's going to be new leadership in the city. There's going to be new leadership possibly in the state. And so, this is a time for us to really, put our flag in the ground and say, here's the south side, here's the west side, here are two marginalized areas of the city of Chicago that, are experiencing just about everything that you could experience in terms of, closures from food, pharmacy closures, which actually reminds me to remind you that October 11th will be where? We'll be right back at the Woodson Library with a town hall meeting around the pharmacy closures that have happened on the south and west sides of the city. So again, I mean, it's just a recurring theme of things that happen to us, and these things aren't happening by happenstance. These are just structural things that we need to be at the table about, and hold our politicians who have been there along the way when all of these things have happened. And so I think we really need to do some meditation and some real research around what we have in place right now. Is that conducive to systems change going forward? And we really have to ask ourselves, is it personality, or are we looking for folks that can get things done in concert with the new leadership that'll be local and at the state level, at the county level, and all those different levels? And so, I mean, it's work. It's work that we have to engage in. It's civic. It's our civic duty to do these kind of things, and more importantly, it's our job to engage the generations that are coming behind us to make sure that they can take the mantle and see how the mechanisms of policy and systems work. And so, in my opinion, there are a lot of broken systems. And so should we still be operating within broken systems for marginal improvements, or should we try to subvert the system, create a new system, change the existing system? Those are the kind of things, and those are the kind of thoughtful debates that we should be engaging in communities all across the city, and not just limited to south and west sides, because as you can see, the violence isn't just relegated to the south and west sides. It's everywhere. There's no security from, experiencing or seeing or reading about violence, and that's because it purely is just spilling over into these communities because of the deep-rooted policies that are in place that we seem to be oblivious to. And so it starts there. It starts in education. We need to be, there was a report that came out last Friday, a very, very disturbing report. And I heard a radio personality talking about just what I'm talking about today. Where was the outrage? Where was the press conferences for 91% of white kids going to top tier schools in the city of Chicago, when only 45% of African American kids are going to top 1 schools? Stop right there. Just stop right there. You don't need to know anymore. So less than 50% of our kids are even being exposed to the very best for the kinds of educations that will propel them to become entrepreneurs or to go on to college level work and aspire to the kinds of jobs and employment opportunities that will pay them above a living wage, so that those loans that they take to even go to college aren't as much of a burden to them as they would be if they're taking less than the kind of salaries that they need to sustain themselves and pay back those loans that are due almost immediately upon graduation. And so all of these things are connected. The better education that you get, the better opportunities you're going to have, and the smaller amount of debt you'll have to embrace because of the fact that you've been exposed to a much better education. So just want to talk about all those things. This is the quality of life that we're trying to aspire to at Endeleo and Trinity and the revitalization of the corridor. It's about education. It's about community development. And when I say education, I'm not just talking about book education, but the education of being politically savvy, civically aware, and just community wise. And so, we welcome you joining us. The Endeleo Institute is the nonprofit arm of Trinity United Church of Christ. We look forward to seeing you at the farmers market. There are 2 weeks left. That's right, T. 2 weeks left. 2 weeks left in the market. We're going to have kids from the pharmacy school at Chicago State there this week from 10 o'clock to noon. So come out, learn about African American pharmacy students, and we'll see you then. Take care, and we'll see you next week.